For plebs, by plebs, dropping the Bitcoin only signal. Pleb Underground. Welcome everyone to the Pleb Underground.
Pleb Underground, episode 2-3, here with Brian Trolls, that's Shinobi. Don't trade, best ignore plan B, pure and simple, stack BTC, keep stacking sats, they're discreet. You gotta use tools to be discreet. If you want privacy, you gotta learn. Keep liquid, spend less than earn. Bitcoin is ultimately a technology for saving. Statists think without taxes, no paving. Adam's no longer here, but we'll be talking Genesis. Gemini. Is Mr. Silbert their nemesis? You had all those coins. Why play a fiat game? You had everything to lose. Now hang your heads in shame. For stealing your idea, you took the money from the Zuck, but now you've given it all to Barry. Who's really the bigger cuck?
That's right, everybody. Welcome back to the Pleb Underground. Joining us, we've got Shinobius Monk. That's right. He has come back to us. Walton, freaking awesome rhyme, my dude. Very well done. Very well done.
There's only one Shinobi, right?
Exactly. There's only, well, I mean, we got him
we got him
we
twice.
had a fork before.
Yeah.
But it got solved.
What? Shinobi SV?
Shinobi SV.
Hey.
It's not real.
Hey now.
Speaking of which, he wrecked himself again, by the way, this week. Anyways, we're not going to talk about that. We've got some other stuff. Right now, though, we are diving into the numbers.
Right, the numbers brought to us by Timechain Stats. And don't forget, if you want a new way to check out the Timechain, check out Timechain Calendar.
At the time of this recording, the block height is 771,785. The Bitcoin price, 19,328. Total public lightning capacity, 5,152. Moscow time, 5172. We're below 6K again on that one.
That's quite a jump, isn't it? That's closer to 5K, right? That's quite a jump. It sounds like you can't buy as many sats for your dollars these days. What's going on, guys?
You get like 900 sats less per dollar all of a sudden from last week.
This is what's known as a bull trap, I believe. But actually, you'll see in the REKT segment someone who I think bet the other way and didn't do too well. But you'll see that a little bit later.
Awesome, and we're gonna finish it off with, that's right, the Bitcoin security chain rewrite days, 809. Those are the numbers, guys. All right, let's dive into some other numbers, because guess what? As we are talking about Bitcoin, the governments are not stopping to print. And this week, we've got some numbers out. We've got CPI data and all that kind of fun stuff like that, where the government pretends that everything is not as terrible as it really is. But let's zoom out and take a look at some other countries. We've got a tweet over here from Nathaniel Whitmore. When I studied and lived in Cairo, 2004 to 2008, the US dollar was worth 5 to 6 Egyptian pounds. In 2017, it shot up to 15 to 18 pounds per USD. Since October of last year, it has shot up from 20 to more than 30 EGP per USD. This is real. This is happening everywhere. And I think that, I don't know if it's just the US, because I also lived in Canada, but I find that the news here is very ethnocentric, right? Where it's like the rest of the world doesn't matter unless it's some type of like a thrill piece or something like that they put in.
The United States thinks it's the center of the world, is what you're saying, Phil. Which is, yeah, it does. I mean, certainly economically there is an aspect of truth, but yeah, culturally less so, despite what may be perceived.
So, we take a look around the world and we are clearly seeing this problem where their money is not as powerful as the USD. And I'm sorry, but that debasement, I know we call it inflation, but that debasement rate is just absolutely insane. Come on, man. That's not even 20 years, Anyways, thoughts on this before we move on to the next set of numbers?
I don't know, man. I think that aside from what's happening in my local supply chains, I don't really care much or keep up much with the economy lately. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, and things are just going to keep getting crazy.
Yeah.
So
you know,
basically, what Shinobi says is he doesn't care about people on the other side of the world because he's got his own problems to deal with, which is kind of fair enough because everyone's kind of got a lot of problems to deal with these days in terms of inflation. So, yeah.
well, look, we're all dealing
me
with
know
Starts at home, right? Like you probably saw that Alex Stein clip where he's asking the Ukraine supporter outside the White House who's trying to collect money to send more money to Ukraine if he'll give some money to some homeless guy, and he's refusing. Saying no, he's trying to raise money, to send more to Ukraine. It's like, but they're selling billions to Ukraine. Like, and you got homeless people right here. Like, charity should start at home.
It's a very good point.
Let me know when the yen implodes. That's my my watermark for big shit is going to change and affect me.
Well, actually,
right.
talking
No,
about
that's
that,
fair
that's
enough.
My next link for numbers actually. Yeah, so here we have Ben Rickett showing what's happened to the Bank of Japan's bond market. You can see they were trying to maintain a particular rate. They were buying essentially all debt at a particular rate, and then they tried to maintain another one, and you can see it's now breaking that level. The Japanese economy crumbling in real time here.
Didn't, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Japan suffer the lost decade where they had like massive deflation? And then after that, they slowly started to pick back up again, and I feel like that they're essentially about to just spin their wheels and fall right back into something maybe even worse now.
You know how all these Western economies have aging populations?
Yes. They might have the oldest, right?
They have like the worst of the kind of that aspect. Like I'm pretty sure like there's a whole bunch of like young Japanese people who are dating Pokemon basically and all this sort of thing. Like there's some crazy stuff going on. That people talk about all these weird schemes to kind of reduce the birth rate. Like go have a look at Japan. You I think you'll be surprised.
Well, especially people dating Pokemon.
All right, well, I mean,
slightly, but I have no idea. There probably is. You know what it's like. You can make it's now difficult to tell what's reality and what's a joke. Like because there's not much between them anymore.
I mean, they have played all of the games targeting interest rates, like trying to keep the economy floating along on debt that every Western country has, and they've played them 10 times longer. Like, I think the Bank of Japan owns more than like 50% of their equities market. Like, it's just, they're going to have very, very big problems very soon. And like, there's no more games to play for them. Like, they've been playing them so much longer and harder than the rest of us. Like, things are about to come home to roost.
So talking about playing games with numbers, right, and discussing governments and their incompetence. So here we go. This is an interesting tweet out of from Robert_Rev13. So look, so the U.S. tax revenue, 2.17 trillion, Fed budget 3.82 trillion, new debt 1.65 trillion, national debt. What is that? Is that 14 trillion, 14.2 trillion? Recent budget cuts. What is that? Is that 38.5 billion? Okay. If I got those numbers wrong, Walton, let me know. Now let's remove 8 zeros and pretend it's a household budget. Annual income, 21,700. Money the family spent, 38,200. New debt on the credit card, 16,500. Outstanding balance on the credit card, 142,710. The total budget cuts, 3,850. And I have to say,
it's funny, but it's really not, right? Like you laugh because otherwise you're just gonna cry. Like it's insane. I think
the pathetic?
Number, if you go on, I think US debt clock. The number to keep track of is kind of in the bottom right, and it's about the future spending that is what's the word essentially guaranteed at the taxpayer's expense, and per citizen that amount is about $500,000.
Just instantly born into debt. It's absolutely ridiculous. So look, those are frightening numbers, very frightening numbers, but at the same time, we've got hope, right? because we have Bitcoin, there is hope that we can separate state and money, and that we can possibly start to change what it is that's happening.
Meanwhile, we have the Fed giving a $4.3 billion loan to SilverGate, who of course are kind of, the bank of shitcoiners. Like, what the actual fuck, right? This is the contagion that the Fed, the FDIC, OCC are warning about last week, and will be used to spur the Bitcoin regulation. So here you have the classic centralized, bait and switch, essentially, of we're going to regulate because there's contagion, but actually we're going to essentially cause contagion because they're gonna bail out people who are part of it. They're talking both ways.
Actually, I dropped a clip about this today, and there's a very strange relationship between DCG, GreyScale, and I'm sorry, I just totally blanked out on their name.
Genesis?
And no, the one that you just had up on
SilverGate. Sorry,
SilverGate. Thank you, SilverGate. So it's really peculiar because it looks like somehow FTX Alameda funds ended up getting paid to SilverGate from DCG, if I understood correctly. And so obviously at this point now, with what's happening with FTX, some of these funds may have to get clawed back. So the reality is that the picture at Silvergate is possibly worse than we think it is. And it's much more incestuous because supposedly, and again, it's, this is just from what I was reading yesterday, supposedly they were aware of the origins of those funds, and they didn't say anything. I still think that, unfortunately, there's another shoe to drop. I think there's a lot of gray area that's going on. I think these companies are all way more incestuous than what we see. I just look, you know what? This is what the Bitcoin bear markets do. And I don't actually think it's a bear market. I know that everybody else calls it a bear market, but like I'm when Bitcoin fiat price goes down, that's what it does, right? You see who's swimming naked. And there's just so many of these companies that were, frankly, just hanging on by a thread. You're just essentially hoping that the Bitcoin price is going to go up so that way they can continue to make all these payments and everybody is just happy and going along with it.
Well, I mean, that was the major problem with all of these yield services. Like, they did not look for a stable baseline of yield. I mean, Lightning is kind of too small to service that industry right now, but in the long term, like, Lightning nodes and infrastructure could be an aspect of that, like mining, and then properly manage the risk for like chasing that tail and bring the overall yield curve up. But it's just like they had zero fucking risk management or like conception of a safe, predictable baseline to then build off of. They just went balls to the wall, like, oh, you said you can get me 8%. Here, take half of my Bitcoin. Like, no questions asked, no risk assessment, no looking at like what are their other relationships or like creditor like debtor relationships with other players in the industry. Just, oh, magic number, we'll get more money in deposits, do it.
Yeah, I think one factor maybe these shitcoin companies didn't think through is that maybe a bunch of their customers, a bunch of their degenerate customers might have to make the decision to say feed their families and heat their homes instead of gambling that money. And certainly in Europe, the energy costs have been going up quite significantly. 400,000 people in Scotland having their power cut recently because they can't afford to pay their energy bill anymore. Not that these were all Binance customers by any means, but inflation is hitting people, and certainly those that were probably in their head gambling don't have that liquid cash to keep putting in anymore. there's not a bear market because there's a bear market. There's a bear market because people can't keep buying whatever it is. And one of the reasons people can't keep buying is because they're buying, real things in the real world that they have to buy, like food and energy.
Speaking of which, what the hell happened with eggs? All of a sudden,
you guys, you didn't see that a farm in California actually had a fuck ton of chickens starve to death because rail delays held up their corn feed shipment.
I saw somebody post a graph though that showed like the price of eggs just skyrocketing though. Is that all related?
Yeah, I mean, like it's all got to be supply issues at the end of the day, and like yeah, I think we are a long way away from all of the issues that started in 2020 kind of smoothing out and being adapted to. Like you can't just pivot all of the infrastructure around those problems overnight.
No, that's a very good point. Actually, that is a very good point. I would say that things never really came back to normal anyways since 2020. I mean, there's no, like shelves in grocery stores never really got replenished. There's less variety in most cases. You more often end up hearing that ingredients are missing. It's like even when you go to a place like Starbucks or something like that, like you're gonna tell me that like the world's sprinkles supply is dwindling. It does seem a little peculiar, right? Not to mention.
Yep, I'm sprouting my own bean sprouts because I got sick of bean sprouts being such a pain to find in stores.
See, like why? Like what the hell's going on with bean sprouts, right? Like this is the weird shit. Like that's the other thing. The stuff that's missing on the shelves makes no sense. We are gonna move on over to REKT.
Next up, we have REKT, sponsored by CryptoCloaks. CryptoCloaks.com or CryptoCloaks.co.uk, sites where you can find a whole range of Bitcoin goodies, including the honey badger here you see with the secret compartment in which you can keep your FUD dice or perhaps a signing device. If you use the code PlebUnderground, you get 5% off all the goodies over there, including the Hodlonaut helmet here you see, which if you purchase that item, you contribute to the cause against evil over at defendingbtc.com. But yeah, guys, if you use the code PlebUnderground, you get 5% off all goodies at CryptoCloaks.com or CryptoCloaks.co.uk.
Support your fellow Bitcoiners.
Okay, guys, so first up on REKT, we have some trader doing some very stupid trade, shorting Bitcoin to the tune of $200 million and getting completely liquidated. So yeah, I think that's kind of beautiful, but we're gonna trickle on to a couple more links and then we'll have a little chat. Next we have BSV getting wrecked. Apparently they got delisted by Robinhood, the last of any kind of vaguely reputable site listing them, and so apparently now you can buy BSV. I mean, you can't because no one's listing it, but if you could, you could buy it for apparently about $40.
I'm sure Kurt has some.
Cute. And then finally we see, of course, CSW isn't Satoshi, neither is this guy, but this guy apparently is the creator of Bitcoin, and he had his entire fortune stolen by a hacker. Here, of course, who is REKT? Well, of course, this news publication, because they apparently trusted someone and did not verify. Guys, so yeah, the funny REKT to begin with.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, that was just absolutely ridiculous. The creator of Bitcoin got his entire fortune stolen. Oh man, so close. I mean, I'm sure Luke is thrilled, that they're calling him the creator of Bitcoin. That definitely puts a mark on his back from people who have no idea. But apparently now Craig Wright has competition. Apparently Craig is not the only Satoshi. Apparently Luke is also Satoshi. So
yeah, but with BSV going to 40, it surely Craig's fallen out of the competition. Surely now Luke might be leading. I mean, obviously it's not a real competition, but
Luke is definitely more credible. But in terms of BSV, so not only did they get delisted, but this guy keeps self-owning himself. He put out he essentially he explained that in 2010 he wrote a paper about Bitcoin. Okay, and that he presented it. I think it was like in Switzerland or something like that. And then somebody went and actually found the paper that he wrote, and it actually had to do with IT security, and there was absolutely obviously no mention of Bitcoin whatsoever. So this is just, it's such a long list of self-owns. I honestly feel, I really do feel bad for, I mean, besides obviously you can't feel bad for the bots that pretend that they hold BSV, but for like the 3 bag holders and Kurt, like I have to feel bad for them a bit, because at this point it starts to become kind of like sadomasochism, doesn't it?
I don't feel sorry for frauds, pedophiles, and scammers. Like, sorry, no.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that all the people that hold that have all of those attributes, but I'm sure that there's at least one of those bag holders who thinks they're holding real Bitcoin. They got fooled, and I do feel bad for them, man. You know?
Yeah, but I think that's Calvin, and
People
I don't
deserve to get scammed. You know, Calvin, I don't feel bad for. Craig, I don't feel bad for. Kurt, I don't feel bad for. But that one other bag holder, I feel bad for him. If he doesn't know better.
At this point, if you're holding BSV, you are deranged, like lunatic cultist who is beyond saving in any way. I just laugh. Like, there's nothing to do but that.
Right, you can slightly forgive like midwit Ethereum holders because they're wrapped up in some kind of personality cult around Vitalik, even though we can see through, and you know he's clearly terrible. But you know they get wrapped up in it. Like at least Vitalik maybe has some sort of technical competence, whereas clearly you know Craig does not.
Did you see the thread where there was a Bitcoiner that was talking about BSV, and then of course a BSVer called him out saying he didn't know what he was talking about. So he dove in a little bit about the censorship of transactions, and he created a whole entire thread, which we're actually going to post on plebunderground.com because it's an awesome thread, essentially explaining how BSV. Okay, so first of all, you can censor transactions, you can roll back transactions, okay? But the worst part is that you can actually have somebody added to a blacklist without there ever being any type of discussion taking place, without any type of agreement. You can just submit it to this central authority, and boom, if you're a person that just so happens to hold those UTXOs, you're screwed. All your shit's frozen. Is that not insane? How could anybody sit there and claim that this is an enterprise blockchain and this is going to...
They believe in the court system. They believe in centralized power and, you know, rule.
Yeah. It's definitely not a financial revolution, what's going on over there. I'll tell you that much. Sorry, Shinobi.
But what about the weather, Phil? What about the weather?
Just look at Bitcoin SV, and that is everything we would have been in for if big blockers had successfully pushed everyone into following that path, like back in 2017. Like everything happening there, that would have been happening to Bitcoin.
Don't forget to check out Block Size Wars.
Wait, you said we could have had the weather? We could have had the weather?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the blockchain, dude. Where else should it go?
Man, we're missing out.
if you can stop it, does that mean like you can freeze the weather? Like, how does it? How do all the? I want to know how the. Yeah, I don't know why any BSV people will be watching this, but if any BSV, again, I'm not talking to anyone here because no one who's into BSV actually has any technical, competency unless they're actually a scammer, in which case they're not going to be honest about it. But I'd like to know how the kind of centralized censorship of BSV affects the weather. If you can write to us at gofuckyourself@plebunderground.com, we look forward to receiving your communication.
Or you could leave it in the comments and let us know. And surprisingly, though, even though it was a rhetorical question, believe it or not, Walton, whenever I've posted a clip about BSV, we get tons of negative comments. So there are a lot of people
serious. that... Yep. I'm half joking, but I'm half serious. Like, I'm intrigued as to how those kind of things affect... Like, surely if you have... the whole problem is... shitcoiners basically don't understand the Oracle problem, or they don't understand math, or both, right? Like, and this, the whole weather on the blockchain is not understanding the Oracle problem.
Yeah.
And censorship. Again, it is gonna beat your Oracle essentially, or is gonna be the ultimate Oracle. So yeah, you need to learn more. Up next, we have, of course, the story of the week. Crypto contagion. The more kind of established American funds and exchanges now burning up. We see an article here from CNBC shared by Mike. The crypto firms Genesis and Gemini are both charged by the SEC for selling unregistered securities, of course, shitcoins. We have DCG essentially blowing up and owing Gemini money, and we see a crying letter here from one of the twins. And then finally, David Bailey, the CEO of Bitcoin Magazine, has been running around the last week trying to champion GBTC shareholders to fight against Mr. Barry, when we all know that Mr. Silver is a snake that's many steps ahead of this sort of thing. He has many tools, many corporate sort of tools that he can use to kind of avoid, passing on funds to people that he owes money to, and leaving kind of shareholders in the stitch.
Silvergate got $4.3 billion, I think you just showed before, right? So this is very interesting, right? So Silvergate, which is essentially the crypto bank,
and Barry's got big bags himself. That he could probably pay off all of this stuff, but but the companies, whatever. Again,
but yet DCG is getting slapped by the SEC. Which, don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong. All of this, like what Shinobi was talking about before, the yield and like all of these earn programs. I mean, look, this is fucking bullshit. Okay, we knew it was bullshit, and unfortunately, it's not. It's one of those things where people are going to be like, they're going to ask for forgiveness later. That's really what happened. At the end of the day, hey, look, there's a gray area. I can make tons of money off of this gray area. If we get slapped on the wrist, so be it. It's pay to play. I mean, look, anybody who thinks that these exchanges are looking out for your best interest, you got to be nuts, right? They're obviously looking out for their best interest. This is something we talk about all the time, especially as plebs, especially as Bitcoiners. We talk about incentives. Incentives matter. The incentive for the exchange is to extract as much out of you as possible. That's pretty much it.
And I referenced this in the rhyme at the beginning of this episode, but the Winklevoss twins, they got a lot of money from Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, because essentially they came up with the idea, and he kind of stole it from them when they were all at Harvard together, because he was the coder. He could actually build it. I think it was so anyway, he was kind of brought on, whatever it was. They got a bunch of money from him, to the tune of, I think it was like $100 million or a couple $100 million. It was what's that, 9-figure sum, and they largely bought Bitcoin with it. Quite early on. These guys had tens of thousands, maybe at some point, I don't know, 100,000 Bitcoin, and they played fiat games. They thought, oh, we'll get an exchange, Gemini. Of course, we did a year at Oxford. We're credible folk. We went to Harvard, and you can trust us. We're gonna have a very regulated exchange, and we're gonna have some nice graphics, nice website, blah blah blah. But we're gonna be friendly and US regulated and safe, and you can give us your money, and we're gonna gamble it like Sam did, and we're gonna give it to DCG, for example, who then give it, of course, to Sam. So it's exactly the same thing, right? Like, why did they play these games? They literally could have just disappeared and done nothing forever. Instead, they wanna have an exchange and play fiat games. Everyone wants to print their own money.
They just wanted to make a name with a functional business that succeeded. Just butthurt over Facebook.
But they could have been richer than Mark Zuckerberg. Like, the amount of Bitcoin they had, they could have been richer than Mark Zuckerberg. And they're not going to be, like, not even close anymore. And that's what's going to really hurt for them. And I think it's amusing because, again, it's Bitcoin teaching people humility. Like, stop fucking around. Seriously, it's not that complicated. Just get on with producing real value, get paid for it, whether you're getting paid in fiat or Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin, save in Bitcoin, you know, and over time, you know, you don't need to play, well, not over time, you don't need to play these games. You can save properly. Those games are what's the word? They're a result of fiat conditioning, essentially, because of fiat debasement. You feel the need to chase yield, but you don't have to in Bitcoin because Bitcoin's scarce.
If you zoom out, this is something that we've said before. If you zoom out, put Bitcoin on a decade scale, you're averaging 200% annually. Okay, all you got to do is zoom out and look at it that way, rather than looking at it on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, which is, don't get me wrong, that high time preference crap, that is exactly what the shitcoiners and the exchanges, that's what they want you to think like. They want you to think that you're missing out on a huge opportunity that everyone else is getting in on. You just have to come to the exchange, you know, and buy my shitcoins. The other thing I wanted to say, though, which I think is really pathetic, and it really just has to do with human nature, apparently. So Bitcoin made you extremely wealthy. Not you, but I mean, like, you know, like the Winklevi brothers, right? Made them extremely wealthy. And instead of giving back to the ecosystem, giving back to Bitcoin, right? Building something maybe that's Bitcoin only, the first thing they do is they open up an exchange and immediately start to sell shitcoins and immediately start to make, you know, obviously commissions off of people's trading. So I think we have, in terms of humans becoming better people, I think we have a long way to go, because I would feel like, you know, myself, if something made me incredibly successful, I personally would feel indebted to it, and I would want to give back to, you know, to whatever it is, to that community or to those people. Like, why not? You know, like, it just doesn't make any sense.
This is about the psychology of the individual, and these guys already thought the world owed them everything, and they, you know, they thought they were gods, and they were shown to not be.
They're definitely not gods. No, they're just two twins selling shitcoins. What they are.
They remind me a bit of Dennis from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I could see that. Sorry, Shinobi.
Vibes. Yeah.
I feel a little bit bad for him, man. I mean, I'm not a fan of regulation, but like all they really tried to do was just be like the regulated exchange, and for the most part, just kept copying what other businesses were doing, and then kaboom! All of a sudden, the spotlight's on them because of BTG.
I mean, in fairness, the only real aspect of their business that's affected is their earn platform. So it's not like, you know what I mean? The other part of the business,
because now people leave. Like,
yeah.
This is...
No, hey, look, people leave, but people are leaving exchanges anyways. So,
but I don't know. I feel like that's one of the key reasons people were using it, right? Was because there's going to be a lot of people moving.
Well, look, we're going to have to see how this plays out. I mean, they've been wasting the last 2 weeks bickering with Barry on Twitter, which has pretty much gotten them nowhere. Although it was extremely entertaining. I did enjoy the entertainment. Yeah, man, we'll have to see how this plays out. All right, we are moving on over to the Hopium. The Hopium is brought to you by Represent. Check them out, representltd.com. It is clothing made by a fellow Bitcoiner. Awesome threads, great quality. Look at me. I finally changed out of the same hoodie that I wear all the time sporting the t-shirts. That's right. Decentralized ops. Very nice quality. Walton's got the regular crest logo, which looks absolutely amazing. Don't forget to check them out. RepresentLTD.com and use pleb-underground for 10% off. All right, guys, for the Hopium today, we do have some pretty decent Hopium. There was some big stuff that happened this week, and we are about to review it. Let's get started. First things first. All right, we've got the El Salvador news with the bond. Let's dive into it. El Salvador voted to pass a bill which paves the way for the issuing of President Nayib Bukele's Bitcoin bonds. The plan, which was announced in November 2021, would entail El Salvador issuing $1 billion in bonds on Blockstream's Liquid network, a federated Bitcoin sidechain. The goal of the bond issuance would be to invest half the money into Bitcoin and the other half into infrastructure necessary to build out the Bitcoin industry in the Central American country. The bonds, according to the statement at the time, would yield 6.5% and enable a fast track for investors to acquire citizenship in the country. Interesting. Exactly 1 year after the announcement of the plan, the bill that was voted on today was introduced by El Salvador's Minister of the Economy, Maria Luisa Hayam Breve. Wow, that's a lot of names. To the country's Legislative Assembly as the next step towards this plan. In a statement, the Bitcoin magazine, Max Kaiser, a Bitcoin educator and advocate, who has also been a major proponent of El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin since the process began, states that he believes this is one of the most important milestones yet. Making Bitcoin legal tender in September 2021 put El Salvador on the global financial map. This new law furthers the mission of President Bukele by establishing a foundation for a new global digital securities layer built on Bitcoin.
So basically, Max is teaching them how to shitcoin. Like, is what's going on. Well done, Max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget my gold back tethers.
Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure Samson's basically following in Max's stead. Let's be honest, going around teaching countries on how to do Bitcoin. Of course, then the Max follows along afterwards. What to teach them how to shitcoin? Is that how, like there are like?
Dude, I would not call bonds being tokenized or things like securities being tokenized shitcoining per se. And from my understanding, this pretty much throws 90% of shitcoins into a bucket of being considered a security legally. So like, I mean, overall, I would say if they're going to keep legislating about shit, this is not a bad direction to go.
So in my case, my whole thing, I'm thinking about the tether, the tether gold or whatever the hell it was that he was shilling a couple of weeks ago. I'm not even talking about the bonds. Personally, I mean, look, and it's obviously, to depending on who it is, they're going to see it as like, shitcoin apologist or fucking Blockstream apologist or whatever the hell it is. But at the end of the day, to your point, they are locking in the Bitcoin and it's a federated sidechain and they're issuing bonds. So it's going to be plain and simple, right? They either are able to deliver on the promises and are able to pay the bonds out, or they're not. This is either a very good idea that proves to be very fruitful in terms of, I would say, Bitcoin's visibility with institutions, or it becomes a massive failure and, we end up learning from it. But the other piece that I wanted to say about this was, this isn't really news for retail Hopium, right? This is like, it may seem that way, but really like the average person, I don't think they don't really know about El Salvador. They don't really know what's going on. Like, we're in an echo chamber with El Salvador as Bitcoiners. So I think that this is big news for institutions and other governments. That's kind of my take on it. Sorry, Walton, go ahead.
Do you think with Max there, that's why there's a dash of hope?
I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Hopefully there is no dash.
Shitcoins.
Dude,
Fuck
you know
shitcoins.
what? I know that, I know a lot of Bitcoiners that like him.
Fuckshitcoins.com. Fuckshitcoins.com.
Yes, that's right. Fuckshitcoins.com.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next Hopium, because that's right. We've got some other Hopium. I think this is very cool. Haven't seen this in a while. And this was shared by Walton. Thank you very much. New Belgian MP on taking salary in Bitcoin. I want to defend financial freedom. Now, of course, guys, we know You don't trust the politicians. Okay, so
wait, I'm
taking
confused.
it with a grain.
I didn't. I just read the headline and shared it. To be honest here, but like, how did you find the article? Because I didn't think Bitcoin Magazine actually share their references either. To be fair,
No, they didn't. I went to go find my own article, and that's usually what I do. Usually, when I see something from Bitcoin Magazine, I got to go and find some type of a source, because it's not that there's anything wrong with it, but you need to actually get the the meat and potatoes, so to speak. So check this out, guys. Right? Like, I mean, this is pretty big. You're first European politician to take salary in BTC. I'll tell you, somebody who's not happy right now, Klaus. I'm sure Klaus is not very pleased with this MP, and neither is Christine Lagarde. They're not happy, and neither is the IMF, and I'm sure they're gonna let them know. Anyways, let's dive into this very quickly. Christopher D. Buchler, I know I killed your name, I apologize. Not that he's listening to the show. A member of the Belgian parliament has become the first politician in Europe to convert his salary to Bitcoin. I'll give him a clap, why not? Buchler, a member of the Humanist Democratic Center Party. That just, I don't know. It's all words. Anyways, has a monthly salary of, what is it, 5,500 euro, 4,500 pounds. He said to be planning to take his entire 2022 salary in BTC. He said that he had been inspired by Eric Adams, New York's mayor, who announced in November 2021 he would take his first 3 paychecks in BTC. So I'm going to suggest that this MP just one-upped the New York mayor, because he's taking his whole salary.
The New York
and
mayor
you know what?
did
No,
a
hold on.
publicity stunt, right?
It could be a
Because
publicity
Dennis
stunt, but I'll
helped
tell
him.
you this. He's doing I think it's a pretty decent move doing it at the current BTC valuation in fiat. To your point,
But also,
is it a
Belgian
publicity
MPs
stunt?
aren't
Most
paid that
likely.
much.
Sorry?
Belgian MPs are not paid that much. I'm pretty that works out to, like, I'm pretty sure what, like 50, like just over £50,000 a year. That's I'm pretty sure, I don't know, UK MPs are probably making like at least 75,000 pounds a year. Like he Belgian MPs apparently underpaid. I mean, not that any other politicians can. I mean, I actually do think the politicians are underpaid, because if you paid politicians, like CEOs, then they wouldn't have to be doing all this snaky stuff to try and, you'd get the CEO type people rather than the kind of Weasley type people who will try and do all this stuff on the side. I think. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, look, it's an interesting point of view. For me, the way I see it is that I've said this 1,000 times before. It's one of those quotes I regurgitate all the time. Essentially, it is not the noblest of people who desires to govern over their fellow man. And to your point about the CEOs, man, CEOs are kind of hit or miss. Having worked at having worked at a few Fortune 500 companies and having directly worked with a few CEOs, it really all depends, because there's examples.
They're like ethically better people. Like, they might be more competent. They might. What I'm saying is, like, you might,
because they're not.
I don't know. Maybe they just steal more money because they're more. I don't know. Again, it's like the incentives are all broken. Like, the selection process in the fiat system is all broken. Like, political quotient is what gets selected for in all these things. You got a bunch of manipulators rising up, because ultimately there is no accountability from the top because of central banks bailing out governments and them not having to be accountable to their citizens.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't see much here except random politician thinks that this will make him money.
Or give him extra popularity. Like, again, politicians buy votes, right? They're trying to get or stay in power because ultimately they're sucking on the central bank teeth.
Yeah, but ultimately he wouldn't be doing this unless he also thought it would work out financially for himself, I think. But yeah, I mean, just. But
what I'm saying is, it's more that like he can kind of, he's quite cleverly hedging. Like, it's a hedge against not being a politician, I guess, is what Bitcoin is because if you have that, if you're properly lodged in the Cantillon system, then you don't really need Bitcoin. You could argue right now.
Is it?
And so he can hedge against his current position.
I have a question for both of you guys. Is it a problem if more politicians start coming out and saying that they're going to take their salaries in Bitcoin? Because keep in mind, right, as we know, it's worldwide. So it's not just like all of a sudden some politician in the States. We're playing a game with the entire world. So what are your guys' thoughts? Do you think that that's going to be a problem? Do you think that we're going to start to see more social attacks like we do right now out of the World Economic Forum, the IMF?
How do we know how much he's spending of it? How do we know how much he's converting back? Like,
no, we have no idea.
Yeah,
but again, it's the perception, right? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, I just think if anything that would further legitimize Bitcoin in the long term, like seeing members of government actually invest in it like that, would make your average person think twice about like how useful this is or how rational this is to invest in. And, you know, from a negative standpoint, I mean, we have more Bitcoiners. Like, no Bitcoiner is individually special when it comes to deciding consensus. Like, I really don't see most people listening very differently when it comes to people on a stage proposing changes just because a politician has Bitcoin or not. But I think they're going to fundamentally just view that the same way. They're going to inherently not trust what somebody in the government is saying we should do to change something like that.
Do you think Lummis has been good for Bitcoin?
Yeah, exactly. It's a double-edged sword because she's like, she gets Bitcoin.
Does she?
Talks about, but she talks about crypto. No, she does. Okay, let me rephrase that. The words that she says often indicate that she understands Bitcoin, but there's a lot of cryptocurrency separation.
I think there's a degree of separation. I think someone close to her knows about it, and has put some. I mean, because I think at some point she basically revealed that she had 5 Bitcoin, right? Which a few years ago. Before my time wasn't worth very much. And so it could have been a one-off purchase that she held on to for a long time. Like, I don't know how we don't really know too much about how much has she been continually buying. Does she talk much about how much if she's buying Bitcoin?
No.
Or is it more that she's running on one statement that she made a while ago? Like, I have nothing against her personally, but like, politicians in general, they're using, what's the term? They're using a positive PR to further their causes.
I mean, dude, Bitcoiners should be fighting against regulations and not creating more of it. Like, it's just stupid, nonsensical, restrictive. Like, I am fully on the beauty on interpretation and notion of how to handle this. Like, we should be fighting legal cases with the goal of getting to the Supreme Court and classifying Bitcoin as a database, as a protocol, the same way source code is. It is free speech. Like, you cannot restrict that. You cannot regulate that in this way. And I think anything short of that is just a self-destructive waste of time.
I think you're absolutely right. You make a very good point. And, I mean, Beautyon is very rigid on that point, and I can't disagree with him. I think one of the issues that we have, though, is that we're fighting such an antique of a system, and it is so big, right? It's such a massive system, and it's so bloated, and like, nobody wants to give anything up. They don't even understand Bitcoin. But the one thing that the government, I think certain people in the government understand it very well, of course, that it threatens their ability to threaten the population. Because at the end of the day, that's what the government does. The government has the control on violence, and as a result, we are forced into behaving a certain way for the most part, paying taxes and essentially paying for programs that we don't all necessarily agree with. And the reality is that system, right? That whole system doesn't work with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is completely, I don't know if it's the right word, antithetical. I don't know if it's necessarily the right word, but they've never, for the most part, we have never seen anything like this in history. Okay, so even us, right? Those of us that have chosen to embrace it, to understand it, to hodl it, like we're all learning at the same time. So imagine these people that are just completely not incentivized for this because they don't get the bigger picture. They are so thoroughly indoctrinated and brainwashed that they just can't see beyond this wall. So I think you're absolutely right. Like we really have, at the end of the day, that is most likely what is going to have to take place. But in the meantime, we're going to try a whole bunch of things that don't work, right? Like we're going to find out all the things that don't work. At least that's
which is why
what
we
I'm
should
seeing.
we should skip to the end and take advantage of the time in history we're at with a Supreme Court that has been the last few years ruling heavily in favor and slanted towards individuals and individual freedom, while the court still has that composition.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't be wasting time conceding bullshit and literally pushing for our own legal restrictions and regulations on Bitcoin.
The problem is that many shitcoiners have a lot of sway. Like people like Barry has a lot of sway. People like Sam have a lot of sway. You know, you see we saw Silvergate Bank get that loan from the Fed. Like the shitcoiners have a lot of tentacles into the fiat system.
100%. And for whatever reason, people are very impressed with power and money, and they don't want to be excluded out of the power dynamic and out of the money. So, and I'm not saying that's everybody, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there. That's really what they're looking for, So, again, the incentives matter. And everybody sees it as my own personal incentive, right? My roof over my head, feeding my family, taking care of myself. I mean, this is and this is again why we go back to saying, Bitcoin fixes our incentives, right? It ends up making it so that by you still participating in that incentive structure, you actually end up fixing the money for everybody else. And to Shinobi's point, right? We end up hopefully at the point where Bitcoin is classified as free speech, because that is really what it is. And really at the root, it's math. So you can't outlaw math. So, which is one of your points. So again, this is just an uphill battle, and believe me, they are going to go.
Didn't they say math was racist? Didn't they say math was racist though? Like, I think that's why Twitter got rid of the 100 button for a little while. Like that's a fact, by the way.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was so stupid. Yeah. You kidding me?
Yeah. And they didn't like the fist or something because I don't know.
All right, everyone. That was our show for the week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check us out on our audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm. You could stream us sats through Breeze. Shinobi, how do people find you? What is the best way to get in touch with you if people want to get in touch with you?
No, sir. Just kidding. Twitter, Brian_trolls with a Z.
Awesome. Walton, what do we always remind everyone here?
Fuck shitcoins.
That's right. Fuck shitcoins. We'll catch you all next week.